Hello, this is Professor Zafari. In this lesson, we're going to continue our discussion of modern art and modernism in general. And to do that, we're going to focus on an essay the painter Kandinsky wrote called Concerning the Spiritual in Art. Kandinsky begins this essay with the statement that every work of art is the child of its age. He states that works of art are the product of a culture, and it follows that each period of culture produces an art of its own. Efforts to revive the art principles or the art styles of the past, he says, are at best will produce an art that is stillborn. And here comes the concept that he's using of spiritual. He says that art that has a spirit is the art that speaks to us, that speaks of its age, and that moves the audience. He says that artists who are imitating art principles and art styles of the past are merely aping. And he chooses this word aping to represent simply imitating, but it doesn't have that same spirit. It doesn't have that same power over the audience. So what does Kandinsky mean by this? Well, let's take a look at some examples. Here's a painting that is considered one of the masterpieces of Western art. Is this a child of our age? We should easily be able to answer no. It's a beautiful painting, and we can all pretty easily say that it deserves its place as a masterpiece, but it clearly is not a child of our age. This is not a 20th century or 21st century painting. This happens to be a painting by the Renaissance master Raphael, and it's Madonna and Child. But what we see in it is a very distinctive style that captures the aesthetic of the Renaissance. What about this painting? A child of our age? Again, we can easily answer no. And again, we can answer this is very beautiful, but it very clearly does not echo, does not present the style, the aesthetic, or even the concerns and passions of our age. Here's another beautiful painting, a gorgeous portrait. It was painted in 1902, not too far in the past, but it still does not really capture the spirit of our age. But what about this one? A portrait by the Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. Now we're closer, aren't we? We're much closer to be able to say that this is a work of art that is a child of our age. The symbolism in it, her willingness and boldness to deviate from tradition and to give us a painting that many people may not even consider pretty, yet for her makes a very powerful statement. This speaks much more to us, to our age. What about this? But what about this? This was an installation by the famous artist Banksy. He did this installation with a pink elephant in the room. Does it make sense? Is there a reason to paint the elephant? What statement is he making? Is this a child of our age? I would answer yes. This work is a child of our age for the questions it's asking, for the unanswered questions that it's presenting, and for the fact that it's provocative, it's not typical, and there's clearly something new that he's doing. Well, what about this? Another piece by Banksy. One could argue this is simply graffiti, this is vandalism, this isn't art. This was never presented in a museum, this was never hung on a gallery wall. Does it represent us? Is it a child of our age? Again, I would say yes. There's something very irreverent about our generation. We're not always willing to follow the rules, and we're also very democratic. We don't feel the need to distinguish between fine art and street art. It doesn't matter whether a work of art is in a museum or on the side of a building. We tend to have a very democratic spirit in our approach to art today and are much more willing to accept it wherever it is. Here's Banksy again. And as I mentioned, we're much more irreverent. We're much more willing to make fun of authority. So even again, it's a very ironic and humorous statement that Banksy's painted on the side of a building. It very much is a child of our age. So Kandinsky continues in this essay, and he says that we can look at society in a diagram of a triangle. And the triangle is divided into segments. The largest segments are on the bottom, and the closer you come to the top, the smaller the segments get. So this triangle moves in two directions. It moves forwards and it always moves upwards. So what is Kandinsky saying? Why does he give us this metaphor of a triangle? What Kandinsky is trying to say is that in every segment of the triangle there are artists. And what is very modernist about him now, is that in Kandinsky's view, all artists are not equal. At the apex of the top segment, he says, stands often one man and only one. Even those who are nearest to him in sympathy do not understand him. Angrily they abuse him as charlatan or a madman. So the smaller the segment of the triangle is, the fewer people understand the artist's work. And as time goes by, it might be that in many years a greater segment of the triangle or a greater segment of society will eventually be able to understand him, and someone new will reach the spot. Someone new will be that innovative avant-garde artist where he once stood. So if we want to take as an example Einstein's work, we can try to understand what Kandinsky is talking about. Here's the triangle Kandinsky describes, and this triangle is going to move forward. The forward motion represents time, and the upward motion represents progress. It represents our development as we experience new art, new ideas. So in 1900, Einstein comes on the scene and he says, Newton was wrong. Newton was wrong. He had it right about some things, but he was wrong. And we have to throw away Newton's ideas when it comes to studying the cosmos. Who agreed with Einstein in 1900? The masses, the biggest segment of society, which is down here, or even the second largest segment of society? Absolutely not. Einstein stood alone. Einstein was in that very small upper segment where he had to stand for his ideas despite the fact that society could not or would not agree with him. So as the triangle moves forward and society progresses in time, the triangle is going to move forward in time, but it's also going to move upwards. So society has progressed to a point now. Einstein's ideas will stay on the same plane. And it's not because Einstein's ideas have become less creative or Einstein's ideas have become less of a genius. It is simply now that society is beginning to better understand him. So now we see that a much greater segment of society can agree with Einstein's ideas, they can appreciate his perspective, and they're starting to learn from him. And by 2000, as society continues in time, it's almost everyone in society, the largest segments in society, that fully acknowledge Einstein is indeed a master of physics and Einstein was indeed correct in his theories. So hopefully this helps. The movement of the triangle through time, the movement of the triangle upwards, represents society. Society has these forward-thinking leaders, these forward-thinking thinkers, creators, and we typically don't understand them. They're weird, or they're saying things that are so outlandish, we either think they're crazy, or we think that they just simply have no merit. But over time, Kandinsky's saying, we catch up, essentially. We as society can eventually progress to a point that we can appreciate these people. So why is Kandinsky writing this? The guy's a painter. He's not a writer, and he's not even a very good writer. What is he trying to say? So indulge me for a second and let's look at an example. Here's an example of an artist. I'm using the term artist to include musician, sculptor. I'm using it loosely. Here's an example of an artist. Here's an example of an artist that is a very widely selling, very popular artist, and I think we could all easily agree as one of the best-selling artists that a huge segment of our society appreciates, respects, and listens to his art.
First time and I was like, baby, 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 oh, like, baby, 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 no, like, baby.
Where would Kandinsky consider this artist in the triangle? Let's consider that question in light of this performance. This is guitarist Kaki King, and she has a very innovative and fun way of playing the guitar. So if we want to go back and look at Kandinsky's diagram, Justin Bieber, he fits down in the bottom segment of the triangle. Would we categorize him in the bottom of the triangle because we're judging his art as inferior? Or are we putting him in the bottom segment of the triangle because it's the largest segment and therefore it's the largest number of people who can appreciate his art? Kandinsky would answer both. Kandinsky is a snob. Kandinsky is saying that some artists are better than others. Where would he put Kaki King? Maybe here? Maybe here? She's not so innovative that she would be that one person at the top of the triangle, but clearly she's doing something that is not as popular as Justin Bieber and more creative, more innovative. So if we listen to this performance, what would Kandinsky think of it? Where would he classify these performers on his triangle? Perhaps that last performance isn't our favorite. It's certainly not mine. And what Kandinsky would say to us is that we are looking away because those artists have higher ideas, and we simply cannot understand their art. So what he's saying is that art is a complicated thing, and those forward-thinking, innovative artists who we cannot appreciate, they are the true artists. They are the true creators. And so we come now to Kandinsky's main reason for writing this essay. He's arguing in defense of modern art. The public didn't like modern art when it emerged. The public heard Schoenberg's music in perhaps the same way we were just listening to the last music performance. They covered their ears, they didn't appreciate it, they couldn't understand why this would be considered art. And Kandinsky's saying that the reason you don't understand it, the reason that the masses don't appreciate modern art, is that they don't understand it, and in a way he's saying we're too stupid to understand it. Those artists are too forward-thinking, they are too innovative for us to be able to comprehend. Maybe over time we'll be able to appreciate those artists, so maybe over time we'll be able to catch up and understand and appreciate the modernists. But, Kandinsky argues, the reason that the masses don't like modern art in the early 20th century is basically because they're stupid. So there's an interesting article here. And in one case, he has a really solid argument for understanding how society tends to progress, how the modernists or other avant-garde figures throughout history are often misunderstood or unappreciated. But on the other hand, it's also a quite elitist argument, and it's saying, I don't care if you like Justin Bieber, I still think his art sucks. It's a really interesting commentary that presents not only the main ideas of modernism, but it also presents an argument that continues today. Do we value art based on the number of people who appreciate it? Do we value art based on the amount of money we're willing to pay for it? Or do we value art based on higher ideals and based on the innovation, the artistry, and the creative spirit that art presents?